Hello, everybody, and welcome. Right now, there is some really breaking news happening, and Russia, as expected, not even a day in Ukraine, has attacked Ukrainian people, has killed quite a few people, and destroyed some military infrastructure belonging to the Ukraine. This has happened in the separatist regions that Russia is claiming to peacekeep right now by sending an incursion of troops. What does this mean? This means that the Ukraine is an absolute alert, and Russia basically is invading the Ukraine. And with Russia's behavior, with Russia's demands, with how Russia's playing coy with Ukraine and as well as NATO, it is showing that Russia also does not respect the Ukrainian people. It is just making up a bunch of BS, and now it is in the Ukraine killing Ukrainian nationals. And then Putin comes out and makes a statement saying that it has to protect the Russian people, this and that, when everything he said before was counter to what he's doing right now. And now he's saying that this military operation needed to happen, and this and that and this. And it's just showing that Putin is being the aggressor on Ukraine right now. And what does that mean for Ukraine? That means that Ukraine right now is basically in a military conflict with Russia. And if Ukraine wants to have any survival, any existence for the future, perhaps it's time to stop playing nice with Russia and actually boost up its defenses 100%. Send its troops to the border and reinforce those regions. If there's Russian nationals and in there, that's not how it works. Just because there's a bunch of people who speak your language and have migrated to another country doesn't mean that you got the right to send in your military after and basically take regions, like has happened in Crimea. These BS reasons of trying to protect Russian nationals and whatnot. And I've been seeing that there's a lot of sympathy here from the West towards Russia, because we're going through a bad time. So we're hearing what Putin's saying about, how unstable the West is and what our leaders are doing and how they're doing things that are not appropriate and how it needs to be checked, and basically playing to our sympathetic card while at the same time, angering us towards our leaders, which we're already angry towards our leaders, but playing that card while being such a manipulative person, especially what he's doing in the Ukraine, is showing that this man is not our friend. The leaders in the West right now are not our friends either, but we are from the West. We have to protect our nations here in the West. And sympathizing with Russia as Russia is threatening the West is not a good idea. Making it look like, it's innocent and this and that. No, Russia's basically saying that it's going to do what it wants. It's paranoid that NATO is going to come and invade it and do this and do that. If Russia is really diplomatic and means the peace that it means, then it shouldn't be threatened by the nations around it forming their own alliances and doing what they got to do for their survival. And Russia's right now boasting, saying that it's the strongest nation in the world, that it will basically defeat any enemy that comes to it. And of course, any power has a right to say that, but there's always repercussion for that. It's basically threatening the people who it's encroaching upon and its allies, and saying that, hey, we're too strong, there's nothing you can do. And basically, that is just words of war. That is a call to conflict. That is basically testing the allies of Ukraine and saying, well, you know what, if you're going to do something, do it. But I just want peace. I just want to do things properly. Well, they begin to kill people in the Ukraine. You're protecting Russians by killing Ukrainians in their soil, on their land, and talking about the USSR and all the territory that they lost, territory that was not theirs in the first place. Basically massacring and genociding the countries that it came to, the people, the populations, cleansing them, and basically installing their people, their language, their culture, their customs, when their customs weren't even being respected under communism. When the Soviet Union was also persecuting the Russian people because it was just basically oligarchs like we see right now in the West, just trying to change the people, remodel them, destroy all their beliefs and everything so that they could take over. Doing all these things that were not necessary to the Russian population in the first place in those times, and the legacy that it has left behind with communism, how it's influenced and empowered other nations to just simply casually collapse without those leaders, those people, those people who committed many genocides, who benefited off all the death that they caused, all the destruction that they caused, and to simply still be here today, breeding, making decisions. Their generations are passing on this wealth, and it's just like that's what happened to Russia. That's what happened to all the nations that it had, all that land that it had, that Putin's saying that it lost when the USSR fell. Like, it's really nonsensical if you actually look at it, but not a lot of people understand that. They sympathize and say, "Oh yeah, they're really lenient. They lost so much sacrifice," without actually truly looking at all the sacrifice that the people who lost their lives under the Soviet Union made without any recognition. Where later on in those countries in the Eastern Bloc, there had to be revolutions and basically blood to regain their independence, to regain normality. After so many of their people were massacred, so much of their culture, so much of their ways and customs were absolutely just destroyed. And you see that for me, it's a little bit personal when I'm explaining this, because I come from a country that's been affected by communism. I'm not very happy with that. Today, we're seeing communist flags being waved in the face of people losing their freedoms, counter protesters against protesters that are just trying to protest negative mandates and negative things, negative agendas, trying to basically reverse the negative stuff that our kids are being taught. And these people are very aggressive, very violent, saying that you're a fascist and this and that, while they're waving the communist flag, which was basically a million times worse than fascism, I would say, because it was there way before fascism, and the fascism that Germany had way before it, during it, way after it, to this day still being the greatest threat to our planet. I say that a lot of my videos because that is a fact. That is a reality that a lot of people miss when they're sympathizing with Russia and saying that, Russia deserves to defend its people and this and that. And you got to understand that Russia has a huge propaganda campaign. It has a lot of bots and internet trolls and people who go around trying to change our own opinion here in the West to think very positive of Putin, when Putin basically just insults us, makes fun of us. He panders to our emotions when he basically doesn't care about us. And that is a pretty big thing that people have to understand. Whatever's happening right here in the West with our leaders and whatnot, these are things that we are dealing with. And to have someone like that, a power like that, meddle with our stuff here at home, while they're, claiming to be for justice and for our people as well, basically just doesn't make sense. We have to defend our borders. We have to defend our people. And as well, we have to defend our ally in the Ukraine. And right now, it's basically a him or us situation. And that's what Ukraine is facing right now. It's either Russia or us. And obviously, Ukraine has to choose themselves. Russia has enough land. It's huge. It's disgustingly huge. It's a huge superpower. It can expand within its own country where it's rural and doesn't have that much population. It can do a lot within its own country, but no, it has to keep buffering. It has to surround other countries. It has to meddle in other countries. And that's one thing that we're seeing right now with the United States and its allies. But the thing is that if Russia wants to be better, then it should be better. It shouldn't be doing that stuff, especially when it has such a great land, such a big land. It has the ability to continue with good diplomacy and what NATO does and everything. If Russia claims to be such a powerful nation, why is it paranoid? Why does it have to push conflict like this? That's going to be inevitable. Like if they just basically just cooperate, just behave themselves, sort of say, they wouldn't be seeing this kind of reaction. If they just leave the countries around them alone, they wouldn't see this kind of reaction. But it seems like they're still trying to play USSR. They seem like they want to make a repeat of it, but with a different moral compass. And, we have to be aware of that stuff. And I don't believe that right now Putin is in the right, especially with what he's doing. Not even a day in Ukraine, and already he's killing Ukrainian nationals, destroying military infrastructure, showing that he's going to not just back these separate regions, but he's going to make sure that these regions remain completely separate, and then meddling further into the Ukraine, making the Ukraine smaller. Well, Russia is so big. Oh, because we're defending Russian nationals. What about the Ukrainian nationals in there? What about the Ukrainian native speakers that are there? The people that are originally from those regions, what about them? They don't have a say? So that's what Russia's doing. We sympathize with Russia because it uses its voice, it uses the propaganda, it uses all measures to make itself look like the good guy without considering what's happened to Ukrainian people, while at the same time saying, oh, if you guys just comply, you get to go back to your families, don't do anything, let us just do our thing here. Well, Ukrainians are going missing. Even in Russia, anybody who speaks out against Putin or tries to have free press disappears. And to think that these are things that we're facing here in the West, these are things that we don't like, we don't agree with, why in the world will we agree with a dictator like that doing that in Russia and the countries around it? And then to say that we support them while we want free speech, while we want fair elections, while we want democracy in our country, while we want fair representation. That just does not work. So there is a lot of people that have been convinced by this. Ultimately, yeah, we should strive for peace. We should strive for compassion. We should strive for understanding. But it's really disturbing seeing a lot of people here, especially on social media, trying to back up Putin and his actions when they really don't have a clue what that means for our nations, what that means historically, what kind of people are behind these kind of pushes, what kind of people have inherited wealth and success from many graves that were created as a result of that in the past, many people that were racially cleansed, people who basically went through that Nazi regime, but over and over and over and over without recognition, without any type of memorials or anything, recognizing all the people that fell to communism. We don't just go visit the place where all these people got their Holocaust, all these Christians, all these people that were just different to the Soviet Union, different to that push, that lost their lives, that got it even worse than what Hitler did. They had it over and over and over done to them without any justice, without any allies coming in and saving them. To the point where Kissinger said, I have more interest in promoting what happened under Nazi Germany than ever mentioning communism and what happened there, especially in Russia. They don't mention it. They don't want to mention it. They say that it's just, there's no point. What's the point of putting all that propaganda in there when Germany's more beneficial? These are things that Kissinger himself said. Like, no, we don't need to shine the light on what happened with the Russians, with the Eastern Bloc. All we got to do is just focus on what Germany did. So you guys see right there's a double standard. Why? We can see why. Because of allies, because of interests that we have with that. But when it comes to communism, perhaps the personalities from the leaders in our countries in the past, and even to today, as you can see it, they favored communism. They wanted it, but there was a major war that happened and little conflicts afterwards that kept our powers from going in that fully. Where France was collapsed, where France had a very similar idea of wanting to impose a communism, always almost had. You see right now it's Justin Trudeau from the French side here in Canada that's imposing that doesn't care about the English side, that wants their supremacy. They want their separation, and it seems like they don't really care how they get it. They'll disparage the rest of the Canadians. They will turn their backs on them, saying that, these measures against the freedom protesters should only be in Ottawa, should only be in the West, but not in Quebec. We'll handle it ourselves, but it's okay. We'll send troops over. We'll send the police reinforcements to go back that up, but don't ever you dare bring it here. So you guys got to understand that there's a lot of personalities in the West that wanted this communist push, but it was stopped because of that war. It was too much resources were put into that, so they had to give democracy more of a chance than they wanted to, it seems like. That right there seems like speculation, but if you actually look at the history and what our leaders supported in the past to what they're supporting today, it's much different than what our people believe in, than what our people want for their futures, what our people is, what makes them our people. We are also being infiltrated here in the West. But Putin, where he comes from, these are people that did it. These are people that are allied with China. They don't care too much. Same with our leaders. They're also very allied to China because China injects a lot of money into our businesses. So if China were to pull everything out, a lot of things like Wall Street and a lot of investors would basically collapse. Why? Because our nations are in debt, and the enemies of our nation are helping that debt come about. We're being subverted into that debt while our leaders are saying, yeah, let's go into debt. Let's put our people in this so that we can control them more, so that we can put excuses that we can't afford anything, our economy's too much, we need a fourth industrial revolution, as you hear from the Economic Forum, the World Economic Forum. And you guys got to understand this. Like, before you go supporting Russia and its advancements into Ukraine that are conflicting with our allies, putting our safety on the line where we could be drafted into wars against these people, you have to understand that we don't like our leaders right now, but we got a chance right now to correct these things, to change these things, to install new leadership. It'll be hard, but we can do it. But sympathizing the enemies of our nation, it's not a wise thing. Because once we don't have leadership here, once we don't have our form of doing things, and we're subjected to other powers, because we naively invited it in, you got to understand that. That's what happens in wars. Your enemy will try to make you feel comfortable with them. And once they're on your doorstep, you're going to see why they were your enemies in the first place. They lied to you. They tricked you. They wanted you to trust them so that they can catch you. You have to understand that. And right now in Russia, that's pretty serious. That's what's happening to the Ukrainian people. They don't want conflict. They're hearing what Putin's saying. They want everything to go diplomatic while they're being convinced, hey, trust Russia. And now Russia's in there killing Ukrainians. Now Russia's saying that, we're going to take these regions, or we're going to keep these regions as peaceful and free. And then what's next? They're going to keep moving further and further and further. Oh, there's more Russian speakers there that are in danger, and other Russian speakers there that are in danger. And then, coming to other nations around the Ukraine, guys, you guys got to look at that with common sense. That brings no good. Russia has a big enough nation to where it can just enjoy its life. And no, it wants to keep going into Ukraine. It wants to say that NATO is getting too close. What's the problem with NATO? What's going on with NATO? What's going on with NATO? Like, look how big Russia is. Russia has invaded the East before, and NATO is trying to protect itself from that. And now it's like, oh, well, we're trying to protect ourselves from NATO and this. Well, what are you worried about? Were you planning on weakening Europe further so that Russia can take the Eastern Bloc back, but with a different moral compass? We got to ask ourselves these questions, and where does it lead to next? Think about that, guys. So our leaders right now are no good, but definitely trusting the leaders of our potential enemy is not good, and saying that, oh, we're friends with them and this and that. You guys got to understand that Russia's not friendly with us. They call us the West. How things are here, how things are here, how things are in the West. We have to understand that these are people that don't respect us. Basically, they're laughing at us. And because of our leaders, we're being turned into laughing stocks even further. How are they going to respect us? How are they going to sympathize for us? You have to understand that. And also, we have to watch out for our nations. It's not just about, oh, who's going to treat us better? Guys, this is what it is, and we have to watch out for our nations. And Ukraine is a very important element to NATO. And guys, if people really have the issue, people have to begin to speak. Hey, listen, we don't like the kind of leadership that right now is in the West. Let's change it. Let's fix it. Let's make things better. But doing it this way, favoring a potential enemy of your people, basically is the enemy of your people, willing to go to war with your people so that they can gain their interests. You got to think about that. How is that our friend? How is this we love Russia? Look at that man on the bear, Putin, and how much common sense, he speaks with. You have to understand that we have to worry about our nations. I don't know how else to make it clear, but as for Ukraine, that conflict there with Russia, it has to be met with force. It has to be met with force to ensure that the Ukraine is showing that it's not going to just lay down on this. You're not just going to bully us. And perhaps if the Russian nationals there are too much of a threat in those regions causing separatist regions, then perhaps it's time to deport people. Russia is a big place. Russia is not, does not lack in space to take its people back. And yes, it's time for the Ukraine to go in there and basically push the threat out. And that means, yes, pushing the native Russian speakers out. If they got businesses and whatnot, it's too bad. You're going to cause war. You're destroying my business. You're destroying my country, my people, my alliances, and now my people are dead. Our military infrastructure is dead. People are disappearing. And then they're claiming that it's these fascist Nazi tendencies from Ukrainian nationals. Come on. You can't say that when you are yourself a fascist, when the communist system was fascist, where the leaders were fascist. They were all about their own family, all about their own kind, but everybody below them was subjected to communism, which was much worse than fascism. There was no love. It's just everybody's the same. Everybody's a peasant. Everybody can disappear the same. And that's right now still happening in Russia. People are still disappearing. People are still losing their lives. Yes, we love Russia. Everything's cool. Look at this man on the bear, riding on the bear. There's Putin riding on the bear. It's so cool. We love Russia, but think about it very closely. Think about it very closely. Even people in Russia are being suppressed from their simple liberties. It's almost like a borderline China, but a little bit more nationalistic, a little bit more lenient. But no, there is a cruel system that runs over it, and it's not a positive thing. It's not something that we want here, and we've had a taste of it. We've had a taste of the organized crime, of the hacking and whatnot, the meddling and the proxy wars of the past, and the destruction that communism is causing, and as well as people waving these communist flags, while anything that is different is called fascist and evil and bad, where communism's what? It's like a positive thing. Right now, as Canadians, we are experiencing this whole a little bit of the taste of communism, extreme socialism. Here, we got it right now. And we don't like it. We're protesting. We're having a prime minister who acts like a communist dictator and trying to censor and repress everything, and anything towards his image as a threat. He wants to be Dear Leader Trudeau. So we're having a taste of these remnants of communism trying to evolve and become our governments right now. And yeah, so you guys gotta look at that very carefully when you're saying we love Russia, sympathizing for Russia. What about the Ukrainian people? What about our allies? What about our future? You got to think about that. We can't be weak while these leaders are weakening us right now. We have to defend ourselves and set things straight here in the West. But at the same time, we got to protect our borders. We got to protect our allies. We got to ensure that we have a nation to defend, a nation to change. Because if it keeps going this route, it's just confusing people. It's making people demoralized. If there's a conflict ever needed, people are confused, getting captured by the bad guys, and you're just giving yourself up. Oh, yeah, we love you. We understand you. We used to watch, propaganda about how cool and how much you love us and how much common sense you speak. Next thing you know, you're in a prison camp working to death, being summarily executed by the thousands. And then you wonder, why in the heck did I ever put my hands up and say, you're the good guy? You guys got to understand that that's how conflict is. It's cruel. It's mean. And you have to watch out for your people first. You have to watch out for your side and protect it before you can make any diplomacy that could compromise that. And there should never be any diplomacy that compromises that. It should be diplomacy that's sure, that it's being done from a safe position. Because if you're unsure and you're going into that diplomacy, unless it's absolutely necessary, you should not be going into that diplomacy. You should be setting your defenses first. So that is just my take on it. A little bit of a strategic take, and as well as a little bit of the background, a little bit of history, and a little bit of current events, what's happening and what could happen for the future. That's just my take on it, guys. Anyways, all of you, stay safe and God bless you.